Title of this is going to be The Moment a Man Decides to Stop Living Small. So, there's a moment every man will get in his life, and it doesn't come with fireworks, right? There's no like speech delivered alongside it, and you're not even going to get even a little bit of certainty. It comes very quietly. It shows up in the early morning or late at night or halfway through a normal day when you realize that something feels off. And it's not broken or failing. It's just smaller than you know you're capable of being. And most men, they walk right past that moment, right? They feel it, they notice it, and then they bury it under distraction, responsibility, comfort, noise, or even just the excuses that sound reasonable enough to get them through another year. But some men don't. Some men, they stop right there. And that's what I want to talk about today. That moment right there, that the moment that a man decides to stop living small. Most men, they don't live small on purpose. They don't wake up one day and decide to shrink themselves. It happens slowly and quietly, but through 1,000 tiny compromises. You start explaining yourself when you don't need to, or you start apologizing for taking up space. And we've all seen people do that, right? It's like, oh, I'm so sorry. What? And other things, you start delaying things that you know you should be doing. You start choosing the comfort over your growth because you're tired and it just feels earned. You tell yourself, hey, I'm going to get back to that later. But later turns into months, months turn into years. And then one day you wake up and realize you've just been busy your whole life, but not effective. You might have been responsible, but you're sure as hell not aligned. You've just been surviving. There's no advancing happening. That is living small. Living small, living small doesn't always look weak, right? Sometimes it just looks respectable. What's up? Tap that filter. A job that pays the bills, right? But it's going to drain your soul. It's living a routine that keeps everything running, but there's nothing growing. A new version of yourself that functions, well enough to avoid confrontation, but you never step fully into his weight. Living small is when a man knows there's more in him and keeps choosing not to touch it because touching it would change things. So here's the truth, right? Men stay small because being big, it actually carries responsibility. And no, I'm from the United States. I'm not talking about loud responsibility or Instagram responsibility, real responsibility. It's like when you stop living small, you stop hiding. You stop blaming, you stop waiting for permission for shit, you stop asking the world what it thinks about your decisions. And that terrifies a lot of people because once you step into your full size, there's no one left to blame if you don't live up to it. And that's why men stay contained. They call it being realistic, they call it being patient or being humble. But humility is not pretending you're less than you are. Humility is carrying your full weight without any arrogance. And that's rare. The moment a man decides to stop living small, usually it's not dramatic. It's a thought like, I can't keep doing this, or this isn't who I am, or if I don't change now, I never will. It's a moment of clarity that just cuts through all the noise. And here's an important part, right? That moment doesn't ask you to announce anything. It just asks you to decide. A real decision doesn't need witnesses or validation, and you shouldn't need applause. You just need alignment. When a man makes a real decision, his behavior changes before his words ever do. He just stops explaining himself. He starts protecting his time. You see that he starts to move differently, and he's not negotiating with weakness. People around him feel it before he ever talks about it. And this is where a lot of men, they get confused, right? They think that becoming more means becoming louder. It sure as hell doesn't. And becoming more means becoming clear. Clear about what you tolerate, clear about what you allow, clear about, where you're going, clear about what you refuse to do anymore. Clarity is way heavier than confidence. Confidence can be faked. Clarity can't. When a man stops living small, his posture changes. He doesn't rush. He doesn't posture. He doesn't chase some approval from somebody. No, he takes up space naturally. Men notice that, and they feel challenged by that. Women notice that, and they feel steadied by it. And not because he's dominant, but because that man is grounded. Grounded men don't wobble when pressure hits them. And we all know this. Pressure hits. So here's another thing that I think is the truth. The moment that you stop living small, guess what happens? Life tests you. And it's not to punish you, but we have to look at it like, hey, doing this, it just wants to verify that I'm serious. Because people will question you. Circumstances are going to push back, and old habits will try to pull you sideways and make you drift. And it's not a sign that you're wrong. That's the confirmation. And right at that confirmation, that's where most men will just retreat. They confuse resistance with failure. But resistance, that's just the price of expansion. When you take up more space, the world pushes back to see if you're going to collapse. A man who holds his ground becomes something that others can orient themselves around. This is where the wilderness teaches lessons that modern life just can't. The mountains don't care who you think you are. They respond to what you bring. So if you step lightly, they don't bend. If you hesitate, they sure as hell don't wait for you. But if you move with some intent, right, some purpose, step by step, they begin to open up. Nature rewards commitment, not noise. And the same is true for life. So when I spend time in the wild, something always becomes clear. There is no room for living small in the wild. You either carry what you need or you suffer. You either pay attention or you're going to get hurt. You have to respect your limits, or damn, you're going to learn those limits the hard way. The wild isn't going to shame you. It's there to educate you. And a man who learns those lessons carries them back into every part of his life. Stopping living small doesn't mean you become reckless. It means that you become deliberate. You stop drifting in and out of days. No, you start entering into days. You're not going to let those circumstances decide who you are. You're going to start deciding who you're going to be before the day ever decides to test you. And that's power. It's quiet power. And here's something I think that women feel instinctively, but I don't think they ever say it plainly to us. But a man who lives small, man, for women, that's exhausting to be around. And it's not because that man is bad. It's just because he's uncertainty. And uncertainty leaks everywhere, okay? If you're uncertain, it leaks into your decisions, into your tone, into the way you're going to react. But a man who has decided who he is, who has stopped living small, when you walk into a room, you bring relief because people don't have to guess where you're standing. Men don't need to be perfect, and we can't be. but we need to be solid. And solidity comes from decision. Decision creates our boundaries, and boundaries create safety, and safety creates trust, right? This applies everywhere. So, what does stopping living small actually look like in practice, right? I mean, it looks pretty damn boring from the outside because you wake up earlier, you cut out distractions, you move your damn body, you have intention, you're spending time alone, you're stopping your consuming of the things that weaken you, and you stop explaining yourself to people who just don't need or deserve explanations. There's no montage, there's no soundtrack, it's just consistency. And here's a part I think that matters most probably. It's that stopping living small is not a one-time event. It can't be. It has to be a daily decision because you're going to be tempted to shrink again, to retreat and just blend back into the background. And that's actually normal. But the difference is this. How do I say this? It's once a man has felt what alignment feels like, living small becomes unbearable. You can't unknow it. So if you're listening to this and something in you is tightening up, right? That's not an accusation, right? That's just recognition. It's the part of you that knows exactly what I'm talking about. You don't need a new personality, you don't need a new identity. You just need permission to be what you already are. And permission, it's not coming from the world. It comes from decision. So here's the quiet challenge, right? Don't announce anything. Don't post anything. Don't explain anything. Just pick one area of your life where you've been living smaller than you know you should. And then here's what you do. You correct it, right? Today. So stand up straighter, speak cleaner, move with some intent, cut out what's weakening you, and then perfect what matters. That's it. That's it. That's how it starts. Because the moment a man decides to stop living small, the world doesn't get easier, but it does get clearer. And a clear road is always better than a comfortable cage. This is the Hard Road Hour. I want you all to just walk steady. Build something real. And I'll see you all on the hard road. And if you haven't, you guys, please subscribe. It helps my channel. And I'll see you guys on another hard road.